Hey, happy Saturday evening, Sunday morning, whatever it is for you. Hope you're all well. We got a whole 4 people here today. I'm sure everybody is over at Chris at Go Home's live stream. Good evening, YouTube friends. Eric is in the house. How are you, Eric? Good to see you, my friend. We have Arty is here. Attila is here. Andy, the hot dog pilot, is here. Randall Ellison was here. We have Andy81E. And, of course, Eric just popped in from A&C Railroad and Scale and Life Journey. Great to have those of you here today. Got a couple of things I thought I'd share with you. Although don't need my messy stuff here right now. Earlier this week, I posted a couple of videos about me taking a couple of more of my locomotives and making them digital. Now, this is about as simple as it can be to take analog to digital. Märklin has a kit specifically designed for a type of motor they used in a lot of their old machines called an Alstrom motor. And Alstrom is not, it's what they call it, but it's not the name of somebody. It's not like somebody named Bob Alstrom invented it. Alstrom is German. It means all currents because the motor functions AC and DC. It's a special type of motor. And so when you go to make it digital, you can't just pop a decoder in and say, oh, look, it's digital. There's a special type of decoder you have to use from Märklin, although other companies make variations of it. But you can't just go grab a Blunami or whatever and just pop it in. It will not work. You have to use a special decoder that converts the DC motor back into AC, et cetera, et cetera. So anyhow, I've shown that in videos. There's a little switching device, which we call a relay, a switching relay, which converts the current. So when you change directions, it immediately converts the current so the train will go the other way. The locomotive will. Anyhow, I've had one quote failure, and it's this guy. And when I got this guy, it was already dead. I showed this in one of the videos I did earlier this week. The pictures were dead, and wires had been disconnected. And I fiddled with it, got some power to it, and put the decoder in. And the last video I showed, it was running in one direction. It would only run in one direction and not very smoothly. So I continued working on it, and my friend Jean Ricard called earlier this morning, and as we tried to troubleshoot, he's got a lot more experience with this than I do. And one thing we found was that there's a wire down here that was actually disconnected, and the thing is, it was a stiff wire. It looked like it was still connected to this little board on the motor here. This, let me see if I show you. This is where your 2 lines from your motor connect in, and underneath you can see the coil from the motor here. 3 lines come up that. One comes up and goes through this black encasing down here and connects to the motor here. The other 2 come up here and take the current, in this case, from the decoder. Originally, it would have been the currents from the relay and sent the messages. Okay, so anyhow, there is a little microscopic copper wire underneath here. I don't know if it's kind of hard to see, coming off that coil. And It looked connected. It looked like it was still in point, but literally it was probably a 100th of a millimeter disconnected. So we resoldered it, and all of a sudden we were getting sound out of the other side. The other side had been dead, but now we're getting, the engine is purring. The motor is purring. You're getting a hum, but it's not moving. Well, long story short, we had to do some other work. We do have one light now working. We just don't have a spare bulb. Otherwise, both lights would be working. But we now think, as I had suspected, that the magnetic field, you know, you have a little magnet in here, the magnetic field, there's something in it that's gone, blown. But this actually now runs very smoothly, but only in one direction. You can't change directions with it, but it lights up and runs nice and smooth in that one direction. But unfortunately, after all the work we did, that's all. So you can see the lights are on, and you know, it doesn't sound great because the ski is kind of old and it's bouncing along that, but it'll smooth out as we go. But nice and smooth, nice and smooth. So it is useful. Now, what I am going to do is, because there is obviously still an issue in the motor, which again, and we took it apart. I took the motor apart and cleaned everything. So we are both convinced it is something in the magnetic coil, that there is just something wrong, and it works fine in one direction, and it's not switching. It is not, even with the decoder attached and all that, it's not switching. And we have switched the wires from the decoder, and we get the same thing. It'll then go in the other direction, or I'm sorry, it'll still work in the one direction, even though you switch the wires, which should change the direction it moves. So basically, it's acting like a very basic analog, even though it's in digital. But it went from not working to working rough but having issues and the lights not working, to it now runs smoothly in the one direction. So it is useful. I could run it on the layout because I only run my trains in one direction, any live stream anyhow. So it's at a happy place. But because it is a replica, I have another 216 already. I'm going to buy the Miraklin motor set and completely replace the motor, and then put a full modern decoder in it that would have sound and everything else. So I'm going to learn how to do that. So I'm going to use this sort of as a training bit. So so I'm happy with what I've done with it. Again, when I got it, it was dead. Wires were disconnected and it needed work. Now it works. It doesn't work perfectly, but I'm calling it like a 2/3 or 3/4 success. Hey, Greg, how are you? Actually, Attila, as you know, I alternate directions with each lane. Like, all the even lanes go in one direction and all the odd lanes go, or lines, the even lines go one direction and the odd lines. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So as I'm sitting here, 1, 3, and 5, lanes 1, 3, and 5, in front of me would run, you would say left to right. They run counterclockwise, or as you say in the UK and UK related countries, anti-clockwise. And then 2, 4, and 6 run right to left for me, or clockwise. You know, if it were a big circle, they'd be going clockwise. But yeah, I mean, this is not discouraging. The fact that I got it this far and I've eliminated, you know, you have a checklist. What could it be? Dirty armature. The brushes are bad. This is bad. This is bad. There's definitely something in the magnetic bridge. I forget exactly what they call it there. It's a big magnet that circles around the motor, and then you change the polarity. And for whatever reason, the before I made it digital, and then since I've made it digital, it can't, the decoder cannot get that to change. It's not obeying the command. So I'm going to go ahead and use this as an experimental where I'm going to buy the kit. It's only $25, and you get basically 1.5 motors. You get the kits to replace, because some of these motors have 7 spokes on the cogs and some of them have 8. So you get both. It'll change it from a 3-pole to a 5-pole motor, but on the gear, it can either have 7 teeth or 8 teeth. And so they send you both of those types of motors. And then the armature is the same. So you just take out the old motor mounts and everything. You take all this out, attach the new ones to the axle, put the new motor in, and then wire the decoder up. But you also have to buy not only the decoder, but you have to buy the circuit board. So it'll be a little bit more involved. But I need to learn these things. And after years in the hobby, I'm learning. Hey, hi, Dwight Curley. How are you? So, yeah, it will be, it's not easy to find, well, actually, it probably is easy to find the same motor. But again, what I'm going to do is buy a new 5-pole motor and learn how to upgrade these and fix these, because I do have locomotives over there where I want to take the motors out and make them full digital with sound. I've got a couple up here. And so if I can do that, why not? And so this makes a great one to practice with, to learn my chops, so to speak. So I'm very excited about that. Now, so that I consider a productive day, that I've got that even where the lights are now working and it's running smoothly. Cleaned it all out, messed with everything, cleaned up the motor, cleaned up all the contacts, new brushes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, like I said, it's a vast improvement even over what I put in the video. But the other big news is, and something I was going to spend a little bit of time talking about today, is if I can get you to look over here. First of all, together for the first time in close to 3 years, my new ICE3 and my old ICE3. This is the one. This is the very first model train I ever bought. Well, hi, Rabel Bell. How you're doing? I hope your weekend's been pretty good. Anthony is pregnant. Attila, you have twisted dreams, I tell you. Yeah, they're all part of the V200 class. So you originally had the V160, which evolved into the V200, and then it became, there's the 215, the 216, the 217, the 218, and even the 219. So yeah, I did not see close enough which one that was, but it was definitely in this class. So anyhow, but the thing is, when I got this one, which was the upgraded, more sounds and functions, new LED lighting system instead of a condensate bulb system, this is model number 37788. This is model number 37783. This was the lower end, still expensive, and this was the much more elaborate decoder. Anyhow, this has not been running in several months because I thought I had blown out the decoder. But before I did all that, I went through everything else. I've been working on it slowly, going through each car, making sure all the wires were connected, and found everything was in order. And so finally, I worked up the courage. I bought a couple of things that I'm going to be using down the road. I wanted to maybe spend some time in this show talking about it. But the ICE, the deluxe ICE3 is in fact working. So ladies and gentlemen, not that it may be a big deal to you, but it is an extremely big deal to me because for the first time in several months, I'm not going to be running it, but you guys get to be the first ones besides me. It's back. The ICE3. The ICE3 535 is back. So I am absolutely ecstatic with that. And then on top of that, I can run my other ICE3. So now the big question is, okay, not one of you probably has that question because most of you have all fixed trains before. How did I fix that? Well, in fact, it was this decoder died. So I had to buy a new decoder. Now, most of you who do digital, you have probably bought a decoder and then had to set it into and program it all. I didn't have to do all of that because I had a shortcut. And this is that shortcut. I actually bought this a year ago, or maybe earlier this year, but it's been close to a year since I bought this because I knew down the road I was going to be using this. This is a Miraklin decoder programmer. And it actually is two parts. This part turns any USB port on a computer, laptop, desktop, turns it into a COM port. And then this is your programming chip. And as you can see, it's got connections for 21-pin, 4-pin, and 8-pin decoders. And then there are special adapters you can get that, like if you have one of those odd 16-pin decoders. It's not way past my bedtime, Scott. I tend to go to bed about 10 o'clock because I spent my life getting up at 4:35 a.m. And I do like to get about 6 hours of sleep. And by the way, at the risk of being, dare I say, improper, just because I go to bed at 9:30 or 10 o'clock doesn't mean I'm going to sleep, kids. But I still want to be asleep by 11 to 12 because I still get up at 6:30, even though I've been retired a couple of years. So be that as it may. So this little thing plugs into a laptop and then you download a program. Actually, the program is in this, that it will automatically read it and load it up. And then you have to download something from Miraklin. Now, this is no different than the ESU loc programmer. This is just the Miraklin version of it. And I could put an ESU decoder on this and work it. So anyhow, so what you do is you plug this into your computer, and then when you have a decoder, you just slide your decoder. Got to make sure you match the right ends up. You slide the decoder onto it, and this is already plugged into the computer. And then you just open the Miraklin file. So let me see if I have the right window up. So this is what I bought, although they've simplified it since that picture was taken when it was first released. The newer versions are much simpler than that. But anyhow, and as you see, you can get it for about 70 American dollars. So you can decide whether that's a good price or not. And now I'm just trying to switch between things. So then here's the program. This is the program. And this is how easy it is. You put the decoder in, and it automatically reads it here. And then where you have the wrench, that's where you just go in and edit what you want to edit, to set addresses, to set whatever else you want to set. Now, to make it even easier, if what you're doing is Miraklin, or you want to use Miraklin, on many of their items, Miraklin has in the downloads. For example, if you go to the Miraklin site, and I got to remember which window has what on it. So let's see. Where's my window that I want to open up? Okay, so that's the one window I forgot to open up. Give me a second here, my friends. And I will show this window to you. I just got to make sure I'm showing you the right one, because right now you're seeing that. So, all right. So if I go to the Miraklin website, and I know there is a list, and I will maybe show you that list real quick. This is a list you can get from Miraklin. Now, yes, the name of the country is in German, but if you know what country your locomotive's from and it's a Miraklin product, all of the basic decoder values are here. So what you do is like, okay, I have an ICE3, so I'm just going to go through Deutschland, which is German for Germany, and I look, and I know the ICE3s are, and they divide it between steam, electric, and diesel. So I know that ICE3s are a class 403. So yeah, I got to go through this, but here it is. 403, an ICE3. So its official list is row 403. So then what I want to do is over here it says article number, Modell Artikel Nummer 37784. So when I go to Miraklin, when I go to the Miraklin website, right here, and I'm bouncing between three windows because that's what I have to do in StreamYards, where it would just be much easier. And I type in that article number, 37784. I click on the item. There it is, 37784. Now, ignore that price. We don't care about that price. What you want to do is go down here where it says downloads. And when you get to downloads, you click on it. And then right here is Sound and Decoder Project. And when you click on that, you go to that program I was showing you originally, if I've got the right window up. Yeah, you go to this one, and since I don't have this decoder thing plugged in, I go to this decoder programmer, and I would say search for 37784, and it will download all the function files. It will download it, and then you just click program, and it will program. And if it's a sound decoder, it will say, do you want the sound files transferred as well? Click yes. So bam, it will automatically program, whoops, wrong one. It will automatically program the decoder with all the sound and light and other functions that the ICE3s came with. They may be slightly different than what the original 37788, because 37788 was released in 2012, and 37784 is the newest one. But all the basics that it originally had will be there. The lights, the sound function, brakes, station announcements, doors opening and closing, all those basic, because they're always in Miraklin, they're always the same function number. So F10 is always going to be the door opening on the ICE3s and ICE4 models. It will always be the same. But like the new 37784 file allows you to change the lights. In other words, you can have cool white or warm white light fixtures like my IC4 can do. This doesn't have that ability. It doesn't have the dual color LED lights in it, so that function just doesn't work. But all the functions it had originally are still there. It just doesn't have all the new functions that have been added. So instead of having every single train, every single locomotive, it takes the type and gives you the most recent. Now, the thing is, if you don't like the sound file from Merklin, because Merklin does do rather sound files, you can download sound files and program them in yourself. So that's how I did that. No, actually, Attila, the ICE3s have English and German announcements. They do both on the ICE3s and the ICE4s, because when you ride them, they do the announcements in English and German, unless it's an ICE3 going to France, in which case they do German, French, and sometimes English as well. But they always do them in German and English. So you'll always get the announcements in English and German, at least with Merklin, because the real ICE3s do it in English and German. So anyhow, so if you don't like a sound file or a particular light function, you can go in and change them, and it will do it for you. So you're not going in and adjusting the CV codes. You just say, I want this function to do this, and then this function to do that, and it will change the CV codes for you. Yes, you can manually change the CV codes if you think something is conflicting, but usually it will auto arrange everything. So it is decoder programming for dummies, and it's just copy and paste if you want to add your own files down at the bottom of the screen. And the problem is I don't have a decoder to explain with. I just learned how to do this the last couple of days, and then today where I felt like I think I know what to do. And so to me, it's amazing. Sorry, we've solved our NAT problem. In other words, we found out why we've got them, but somebody left a potato in the potato storage bin and didn't know it was way back there. And yeah. Well, because it's Austrian. It's Austrian. So like the Railjets I rode on did not do English announcements. The Railjets. The Germans will do it. The Austrians, not so much. Although, again, if you're riding an Austrian Railjet that's going into Czech Republic, they'll do the announcements in Czech as well. Nothing smoking, so I failed. No, I consider not smoking a success. So anyhow, that's just kind of what I wanted to show you, and that killed off half an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and post the link, and anybody who wants to come up on camera can come up and chat. One topic I wanted to talk about today, if you were all willing to discuss it. It's a little hard, but if you can, there's something a few people I know call false flags. You know, there's a term in the model train and rail fanning community called fallen flags. In other words, liveries and companies that no longer exist. A false flag is the opposite. It's a livery that never existed, and yet somebody made a model train of it. So like hypotheticals. What if, what if Conrail and BNSF merged, And the idea is not that it's fictional trains. It's not that it's fictional trains. It is that it is an actual type of locomotive that you would see somewhere. Like, what if they took the famous A4 from the UK, the Mallard, and painted it purple, or something like that, or put it in a British flag livery, which never happened. The Great Britain or UK, because by the way, those flags are different. There are differences in the quote Union Jack, which originally was just what the naval flag version was called, but now everybody calls all versions of it the Union Jack for the last 100 and whatever years. But there are variations of the Union Jack, and it represents whether you're talking about Great Britain, or the United Kingdom, because there are differences. And so the flags are slightly different, and it's all in the thickness of the white stripes and where it's a little thicker and where it's a little thinner. So, yeah, fantasy schemes, whatever you want to call it. For example, I have one. Let me find the camera here. This is the only one I have. Come on, where is it? Right here. This guy right here. This is a German ICE-3. But if you notice, it has red, white, blue going down and says Amtrak on it. It is an American Amtrak ICE-3. There's just one problem. The United States never ran an ICE-3, and Amtrak never had a livery that looked like that. So that is a false flag or a fantasy scheme. Now, again, the locomotive is in fantasy. ICE-3s are prevalent through Germany, Denmark, and parts of France and Switzerland and Austria. Primarily, they're run by Deutsche Bahn, although there is a Russian, I forget what it's called, but it's a variation of the ICE-3. There is the Volaro, which is run in the Netherlands and France, which is a variation of the ICE-3, all built by Deutsche Bahn Siemens Tech. So, for example, I don't know if it actually existed, but I think in Meriklin's case, it probably did. Meriklin just recently released a heritage version of the ES-44 in Pennsylvania Railroad's classic schemes, that brownish, burgundy brownish color. And I don't know if that actually exists or not, but if it didn't technically exist in that, if they didn't make one. Now, somebody said, no, actually, they did take a couple of ES-44s and make them in that Pennsylvania Railroad livery. Yeah. Although, you know, the Asilas that run on the East Coast go pretty darn fast. I don't think the ICE-3 would be, quote, any faster than, you know, the high-speed trains they do have. But anyhow, so yeah, that's sort of a false flag. And I wondered if you guys had, you know, thoughts. Like, do you like false flags, or are you a purist and it has to have been something real? So on that note, I'm going to bring up Randall, who has been patiently sitting in the basement for a few minutes.
Hey, Anthony.
Hey, Randall, how are you?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Well, obviously, judging by the sound of my voice, I am feeling pretty happy today with having my ICE-3 working again, and being able to run both ICE-3s together has made me a rather happy camper.
Good deal.
It has been a long time since I've had this guy running. So to have him running now has just made me, I have been frustrated for so long, because this is my favorite train, along with my Austrian Railjet and my Czech Railjet. It's hard for me to pick, but this had always been my best runner and my most consistent runner. And to have had it die on me was very, very sad. Somebody forgot to close a switch. Or somebody opened a switch on his own. Excuse me. Go ahead and entertain the crowd. How did you take
I don't know why I got to entertain. I already did my own stream where I
yes, you did.
Broke where I found out I had cracked axles in two of my engines. Or
yeah, I
say two of them. One of them for sure has them, but I'm almost positive now that the other one has the same problem.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No, that's right, Anthony. I was just saying because both of them had the same problem where they were running really sluggish. So I'm almost positive the other one has the same problem with the cracked cracked axles. Or split gears, I should say.
Yeah, and what I was saying is, hello, Tom's Miracle Train
Hey,
Layout.
Tom.
How are you? Welcome in. And Greg's got to go. Take care, Greg. It was nice to see you. But yeah, in my opinion, especially with plastic, especially, I don't know, how old are those models? I mean, when were they first released?
Well, and for those that didn't get a chance to see them, this is the one I didn't disassemble, but these are about, I would say, minimum 12 years old, and I would venture to say they're older than that because the box has 2008 on it.
Okay.
So we're gonna go with somewhere between 2009 and 2012 is when these were released.
All right. So to me, even at that time, plastics were starting to go with thinner.
Yeah.
You know, to save a dime here and there, and they'll test these things for an hour. You know, they'll run them for 10 hours. I know Miracle tests theirs over like a 6-month period, but always on flat surfaces, and they'll run them dozens and dozens of hours. But some companies I know might be, well, it ran well for 10 hours, it's good.
Right.
But that type of gearage, the way it's designed to have it all plastic for being a heavy load carrier, that's a stress on the plastic because that metal inside that plastic is going to rub on that plastic and wear it away.
I think what it is it's not necessarily the fact that the gears and the center part of the axles are plastic. I think it's the type of plastic they used in those engines. Mm-hmm. Because if you take apart a blue box engine, they're exactly the same as these. But I think the grade of plastic they used is not as good as what the blue box engines used. And then also, if you fast forward to now, what the current Athearn, the X-ray roll line now, just the Athearn line,
but
and
that
then the roundhouse line and the Genesis line.
It's a plastic piece, and then the gear is plastic. So it's all one piece that kind of slid over the axle.
Yeah, and then the wheels press fit in.
Right. And so what that is, for as thin as that plastic is, that is a lot of stress you're putting on that as the axle is rotating in it. Mm-hmm. And over time, and that axle is going to bend a bit. You're putting pressure, especially on plastic, centrifugal force is going to press that in, and you will eventually get fracturing. Even on metal.
And Lawton was notorious for that, for having split gears. Of course, their stuff, their gears and axle tubes were made out of nylon, which was notorious for splitting. So,
well, howdy, Brian, and welcome in. So yeah, it to me, it's just frustrating that because you don't realize it until it breaks, and then you look at it and go, oh, well, this wasn't the best design. I've had that with a couple of Hornbys I've owned where I start having problems with it, and then I look at it because even though I wasn't into model trains for years, as I always tell people, I collected and repaired electronic toys, electronics, blah, blah, blah. And you can, but with toys especially, you can see where the design was bad. A small, thin joint trying to hold this action figure's leg on, a leg that the kid is going to bend and twist. And you've got to make it a stronger lock-in.
And that's what I was referring to in the stream. When these engines were made, it was not long after the Horizon Hobby had purchased Athearn at that time. They were moving all their stuff overseas at that time. And that we can open up a whole new can of worms about that. But back in the early to mid 2000s, they were moving everything overseas. And they had some pretty serious quality control issues. Their locomotives were not the best. There was a time I actually stopped buying new Atherton engines for 2 or 3 years. Now I did buy a couple of the Genesis ones back in I think it was it would have actually been before these, but back in 07 and 08, I had an FP45 that was a Christmas present from my parents, and then I bought an SD60M from a local hobby shop. That might have been actually 09 I bought that one. But they had the MRC decoders in them. And good night, AMC, have a good one. And those engines, their performance was just not there. I mean, they looked good, but they had a lot of gremlins and stuff that would crop up in them. So,
yeah, and the thing is, there has to be something. Most companies, like Miraklin, has a name, and it tries, in my opinion, to be on top of quality control. But in my opinion, anybody that's into Miraklin or knows Miraklin will say, "Oh, well, they failed here and they missed quality control there, and blah blah blah." And then we could talk about what aspects of quality control, like when they do their decoders and sound files. Like Miraklin, for some reason, just does not get the best sound files, where ESU for a long time was considered top dogs in sound files, although there are many companies now competing. But yeah, Miraklin, my ICE3s handle my incline beautifully. They run it. That IC3 that I just repaired, yes, I blew a decoder, but that was because I had a double short on the layout because something derailed and hit a turnout, and it just created a spark before I could hit the automatic shutdown. And normally it has an automatic shutdown built into it so that if it feels a spike. But for whatever reason, the decoder blew. But the mechanics of the train were beautiful for a 10-year-old model train, even though I only had it. Now, the train itself isn't 10 years old. The design has been out for 10 years. It was first released in 2012 in the version I have. Number 3788 was first released in 2012. The version I have was released in 2017, 2018. They release it with certain upgrades. Like my version was the first year they went with LED lights. They got rid of the incandescent bulbs and went with LED lighting.
And,
but the motors are great. The ICE4s have the same motor, but the ICE3s at most run 9 cars. The ICE4 is designed to run 12, plus the new cars are at a slightly different scale and they're heavier. And my ICE4s do not like going up my incline, whether in a 6-car rake or the 11-car rake I run. I haven't even gone 12 because after I went to 11, before I got the 12th car, it struggled too much. And I was just like, I'm not going to add that other car.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you was talking about them switching LEDs. That was kind of the last holdover to go to LEDs. I think they fully switched over in the really late 2010s, maybe around 2020. They finally switched all their stuff over to LED lighting. Yeah, just going back to what I was mentioning earlier, that was a pretty dark time for Atherton trains as a whole. Like I mentioned before, they was having a lot of quality control issues. A lot of their locomotives, their freight cars didn't suffer nearly as bad as the locomotives did, but they still had a lot of issues with quality control, at least just from my personal experience. And they really didn't start turning things around until 2011. That was when I got that Santa Fe SD45-2.
Right.
That was when they switched to Tsunami Soundtracks decoders, and went away from MRC, and I decided to give them another chance at that time, and I went ahead and purchased that locomotive, and it was night and day on the performance versus the SD60M with the MRC decoder to the SD45-2 with the Soundtrack Tsunami decoder.
Mm-hmm.
It was just such a more reliable locomotive. The sound was really good on it, and it just ran so much better. It ran so much smoother than the previous iterations, and it was kind of at that point I was like, okay, they're starting to get a handle on it now.
Right.
And I still have the locomotive, and it still runs great. So
right,
I haven't done anything to it. So
because as you said, we open a whole can of worms, and you can see in the chat some of the people already were going to start talking about cost and quality control, and it's cost goes up. Period. I mean, cost and quality control have nothing to do with each other in companies anymore. And to be honest, they never did. You always had R&D sections, research and development, which is where, and then you had a QC at the other end of it. But, costs just go up because corporations can get away with jacking up price until they price themselves out of existence.
Yep.
So I want to circle this back. How do you, and I want to ask everybody that's here and participate in the chat, the small crowd we have today, going back to the topic of false flags, and again, I'm not talking about like Tycho space age monorail train. I'm talking about where it's an actual train like the IC3, but in a livery that never existed. So I'm going to ask several questions related to this, and please share your comments. Are you okay with, I know we all say rule 1, but personally, are you okay? Or I know people, and Randall, I think you a while back had a run-in where you had a false flag and somebody gave you some grief over it, if I remember correctly.
Well, it wasn't one that I had in particular. I think it was when Athearn was announcing some fantasy schemes and people were throwing a fit. I'm like, look, nobody's forcing you to buy this stuff.
Right.
And then they said, well, they need to release this and this and this. And they're wasting all their time doing fantasy schemes and all that. And I'm like, they're putting these schemes on models that do not require any R&D. They're already done.
Right.
Like the ES44AC, that engine's been out, over a decade now. The Athearn model is what I was referring to. They don't have to do any R&D on that engine. They can just set the shell down, throw a paint scheme on it, and boot, and pretty much it's done. And they can build up capital to then invest in tooling to then provide the person that wants the prototype stuff that model. But yes, I've had people say that fantasy schemes are stupid. You're stupid for buying them, and this and that.
Right, because in the end, there is a loco they've wanted, and you're releasing this imaginary thing, and you've never released this real one I want, right? Yeah, and that's always the biggest argument against it. And again, I don't think companies put a lot into, quote, false flags. I think many companies just avoid them altogether, but every now and then somebody does it as a novelty to, like my Beetle stuff.
Here's a question I would really want to ask, because I would love to see the answers to this, especially like over on Facebook and places like that. If these companies did every locomotive that people beg them to do, whether it's the Wisconsin Central SD45s, whatever steam engine they want to see get done, whatever diesel engine they want to get done. Let's just say, for example, you tell these companies, we're giving you an unlimited budget. You can invest in all the tools to build every engine that everybody wants, every freight car everybody wants, and you can still do fantasy schemes. So here's the question: if everybody got what they wanted, prototypically, would they still complain if they did fantasy schemes?
Mm-hmm.
That's the answer I want to see.
Yeah, because there are companies. I think, to be honest, was Hornby one, maybe one of my UK guys here. Although I think, well, Andy 81E, but I don't think Andy 81E is a Andy 81E. Do you do Hornby? Hot Dog Pilot Andy does have some Hornby, but he's familiar with the company. Which company was it that they released a locomotive, but then you could order shells of different liveries, but they also sold blank shells that you could paint and either create your own livery they didn't make, or a fantasy livery if you wanted. So if your kid wanted to make a pink one with white bunny rabbits on it, boom, there it is. You can do it. Now I want to get to something Andy 81 said here. He's not keen on fantasy schemes because there's so many liveries out there. And the thing is, there are. I mean, oh my God, Hungary's got some gorgeous liveries on there, and Poland too. And I would never buy them because I'm just not going to do Poland and Hungary. And I say never now, and who knows, 10 years from now, I have a couple of Polish trains and a Hungarian train because Joyce and I went there and rode them. But it is definitely but obviously there's a market out there. For example, I want an American train, but I run European. I wanted the actual ICE-2 Amtrak that did run in the United States, that was sent over from Germany and ran briefly in the United States, but it was too expensive to get. Now I have one. Well, Piko had an El Cheapo Fantasy, but it's an American Amtrak, which I wanted. I wanted Amtrak. Damn thing says Amtrak on it, red, white, and blue. I think it looks cool. It is a cool looking train. And so I think, both my Beetle collector side that has all those Beetle album wagons, and I know American companies, I think even Athearn did the Beetle album box cars, which did not run in reality, but it's kind of a cool little niche collector bit.
Yeah. Attila Varga just mentioned Athearn Blue Box did. That's absolutely right. Back in the Blue Box days, they had Harley Davidson trains. They had Motorola. They had John Deere. John Deere is probably the most famous of them. And they had several other specialty sets that they did, even like NASCAR and football, NFL football train sets. In fact, I remember being on Athearn's website many years ago that we're hitting a way back machine for this one. We're headed back to like the late 90s. Now, I don't know if they ever produced this set, but I remember. Yeah. I don't remember if they ever produced this set or not, but I do remember seeing it on their website. There was a Richard Petty train set at one time. Like I said, I've never seen the set. I've tried to find it. I can't find anything on it, but I do remember seeing it on Athearn's website. So, I mean, fantasy schemes have always been a part of this. I mean, good grief, we could talk about Piko and just have a whole show about that. But you mentioned the with the legendary livery series, where they actually put paint schemes while the railroads no longer exist, at least as we know them,
right?
Or as we knew them. Could use past tense, but like Santa Fe, Frisco, Burlington Northern, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, if I can get that out right. And the list goes on where they just take the paint schemes of the fallen flags and throw them on modern equipment and say, okay, if Santa Fe was still around, this is what an SD-78 would look like in Santa Fe Superfleet colors,
right? Which
Athearn's doing. If Burlington Northern had bought SD-90 Max in the mid-90s, here's what they could have looked like. Now, a lot of people argue with that particular announcement, since Athearn's doing that in the standard cascade green and black scheme. A lot of people came out and said, that if BN had bought them, they should have been in the executive scheme. I'm like, I would kind of pump the brakes on that simply because the BNSD 70 Max that wore that scheme, or the Grinstein schemes as they were called, that was a scheme exclusive only to the SD70 Mac. We don't really know if the SD90 Max would have ever gotten that scheme. The likelihood, because of it's a YCAD, more modern, Gerald Grinstein being the president at that time, the likelihood is, yes, they probably would have been painting those colors, but we don't know that. So I'm kind of glad Athearn chose the route they did with the Cascade green and black. Because it's actually kind of two fancy schemes. One being about SD90 Max, or what if the executive or Grinstein scheme never came about? What would they look like? So, bam, here you go. The engines I have, the now 5 fancy scheme engines I have now, the 2 FP45s that's in BNSF Heritage 2 colors, none of them ever got painted in that scheme. So Athearn said, okay, what if BNSF had kept a pair of them to use to pull officer special trains or something like that? Okay, let's paint them out in Heritage 2 colors. Here you go. This is what they look like. They even include ditch lights that you can install yourself with them, or if you wanted to put ditch lights on them. So that was something Athearn did not even mention they were doing, or to my knowledge, they didn't. So that was kind of a neat little tidbit. What if Rio Grande had lasted long enough and bought SD70s? Athearn's like, okay, here you go. This is what they would look like. And we could just go on down the list forever, but basically it's Athearn saying, okay, if this fallen flag railroad was still around today, what would their locomotives look like?
Right. So just to answer this comment that Arty has, Attila, can you remember it's Attila? Because Arty's
by the way, Attila, say hello to Arty for us when you see him.
But okay, where the heck? Sorry, we're in the middle of trying to find where my
hey, Two Rail fans.
There we go. Okay, here I go. Yeah. So, hey, Two Rail fans, welcome in. Arty says OBB Austria has many fantasy schemes on their real trains. Then it's not a fantasy because it's real. That's what we're trying to say. All my crazy Vectrons that I have up here in Tauruses, like my Beethoven, yes, those really exist. That's not a fantasy scheme. Now you could, we got to define. That's why I'm saying it's something that didn't exist in the real world. The train, the locomotive exists in the real world, but it never had that livery. That's what I'm asking. And in the end, it's always rule one. It's always rule one. People can do what they want. It just, I thought, would bring in an interesting topic. We're not here to judge. It's just, how do you feel about it? And I'm not going to say, well, you're wrong. I'm going to say, okay, that's cool. Because overall, I don't care. I have no dog in the hunt, but I did buy one. And yes, I had a couple of people go, why'd you buy that? It's not, but I also have the same thing, which would be a whole different topic of, like my live stream yesterday, I ran 6 different nations from 2 different continents on my layout. And there are some purists. They're like, why are you running that train there? Because that doesn't go with the scenery you've got. You've got all this train. You're running an American train or a UK train. And it's like, well, who cares? It's rule one. And, but yeah, it's because there are valid, like anything, there are valid points on both sides if we can learn to express an opinion without condemning the other person for their view. Because in most cases, both can be legitimate opinions. There are some things where there's right and wrong, but if somebody likes false flags and say, oh, all my trains are fantasy schemes of things that never existed, or I only run real things. Because like even me, when I started my lad, it was only going to be Northern Germany and only trains I had ridden on in my trips to Germany. And then Austrian Railjet, which I hadn't ridden on at the time, Czech Railjet, which I still have never ridden on. And you start getting away, and then you start going, ooh, that livery's cool. And all of a sudden I've got British trains and Flying Scotsman on my Maryland layout, and I've got a fake American ICE3, and I love it, and I'm not worried what anybody else thinks, but I just wondered how people did feel about that topic. Because again, it does come down to people say, oh, they wasted their time doing that when we never got this. And, you know, in the end, R&D says we might have a market for this and not that, even though this doesn't exist. You know, somebody decides, I think it'll sell. When before it gets made, somebody says, I think this will sell. And somebody says, yeah, let's go for it. And why don't we do that? Because a lot of fans are demanding this. Well, we don't think it will sell.
Yeah, it's one thing to produce that stuff. I even said this once. It's one thing to make the stuff, and people say they'll buy it, but when it comes time to, you know, as I like to say, pay up, I guess what I'm trying to say. You often wonder how many of those will actually buy that product. I mean, you'll have comments online. I see this on Facebook a lot where people will say, well, if you do this engine that's never been produced before, I'll buy 10 of them. Well, yeah, that guy might buy 10 of them, but all the other guys that want it may not even buy one. So that's the problem. You can sit there and say you're going to buy that stuff, but when it comes time to pay for it, how many of them is actually going to actually buy it?
Exactly. And that's why companies also turn around and produce the same things over and over, because guaranteed sells. I mean, every German company will have some variation of the 218 because 218s are extremely popular. They're in dozens of liveries. Right now in my world, the European train world, Vectrons. If you add Roco, Piko, and Maryland together, just those three companies, there are over 400 Vectron liveries either produced or available, you know, produced but sold out or still available now. Over 400 variations of the Vectron. No, I'm sorry, that includes a couple other companies, so not just those three. But between the various big German and Austrian companies, there are 400 different Vectron liveries. Every single one of them exists in the real world because the Vectron is hugely popular, both in reality, the rail companies are buying them up and love them, but it's becoming more and more common for advertisers to pay a few $1,000s and get the vinyl overlays. That's a job my daughter does for a living. She designs and installs vinyl overlays for vehicles. And, you know, and the Vectron is going to sell. It's going to sell. I've got 3 or 4 Vectrons myself now. And I'll have
the same one. You know, it's the same here in the States too. You know, you get people asking, well, why is all you produce is Santa Fe or Norfolk Southern or BNSF or, you know, any of the major railroads? It's because they sell. You put Santa Fe, you put that red and silver paint scheme of the Santa Fe on anything, and it flies off the shelf.
Right.
I mean, people are going to buy it. You put anything in Norfolk Southern colors, and it's going to fly off the shelf, especially the heritage units. That's why companies like Scale Trains and Bachman and all them that's doing those engines keep bringing them out run after run because they sell. So, and that, you know, that's just 2 examples. I mean, we could go down the list. CSX sells. And,
companies sell certain locomotives.
Kansas City Southern sells anything in the Southern.
A little bit of room, if things are going well, a little bit of room to maybe try something new. But again, I wanted to know because again, I couldn't remember the exact thing, and I know a couple other people have talked about it, and I did. I get a couple of people giving sort of backhanded comments about me having the Amtrak. Because you can't please everybody. You got to please yourself, as Ricky Nelson once saying. But, when I got into model trains, I was only following German channels and only talking to German rail fans. And then, but I found a lot of the German channels and sites to be a little too persnickety. Now, I've discovered other channels that were much more fun, but a lot of them was, this is the way you do it, and if you don't do it this way, you'll be shot and has to leave the country. And we and a link to a link led to a comment. A guy published in English on a German site, and it was Hover Motion, Jim from Hover Motion, a UK guy that runs European trains. And this was, 6 years ago. Yeah, about 6 to 7 years ago, I stumbled across.
I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, and he ran German trains, but he spoke English, and he was pretty cool. I developed a bromance on Jim a long time ago. I tease him about it all the time. A bro crush on him because he's got a super cool layout, and he was a guy that was having fun, runs German trains, but speaks in English. So this was the first non-European continental Europe channel I got into. And then from him, Jim had friends with UK guys that model UK stock, and I started joining those channels before I started my own channel. I mean, I was on YouTube, but I wasn't the Model Train Outsider. I was just Anthony Dodge and hadn't posted any videos, but I was trying to meet the train people, because at that time I had a small little 4x8 table with a Lupa track and was running an ICE 3. And so I got to know all the UK guys and started. I know more about UK trains than I do about American trains. You're my number one source for American trains. I've learned more from you.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything bad about any of the other guys I follow, but because I followed you for a while. And sidetrack, I was going back watching old videos, and I found the video where you commented, and I think it was one of my song videos, where you commented and said, "Love this, just subscribed." So I found when you joined my channel. But anyhow, so to make this long story slightly less long, as I started following American channels, because eventually you meet a couple of Americans that are following the UK stuff, or Canadians, and I branched over another continent. And of course, people start subscribing to my channel, Americans but all of a sudden I get people going, "Why aren't you running American trains? You're an American and you're not running American trains." And I'm like, because I got into German trains. But I took a lot of guff. And then even later on, years later, I'd have people going, "Why don't you have an American train? Merklin makes," well, I run Era 6, and Are we good? Are we here?
You froze up.
Uh-oh.
You're back now, though.
Yeah, all of a sudden I'm spiraling, and it says my Wi-Fi is really low. Connection is unstable. Yeah, but something affected our Wi-Fi. Yeah, ever since we went to Verizon, overall our Wi-Fi is better in a lot of ways, higher upload speed, but it's more affected by things. Something we're going to have to sort out, but I am hardwired in. So that was whole house internet because I'm hardwired in. So anyhow, so I finally decided I would get an American train just for the heck of having an American train. But I didn't want the old Märklin Amtraks because they're not the era I wanted, and I didn't think they were all that attractive. My opinion. That's fine. Now, if Märklin would make a frickin' Acela that runs on the East Coast right now, it would be, on release date, it would be in my basement. I would love it because that is modern era and they're a cool looking train based on German. But yeah, so the thing is, I get this, when you get people that, well, that's not right. That's not, the way it should be. Or why don't you do this? You can't please everybody. But false flags are sort of that idea. The only reason I have an American train, well, until I bought Herb's collection, is because somebody made a false flag. I said, now that's cool. I wish Amtrak ran that train. So in my little imaginary world, it runs.
It seems as of in recent times, it seems my run-ins with the anti-fantasy scheme crowd appears to have been mostly on hey, good night, Ray. Appears to have been on Facebook more than YouTube. And you get when somebody announces a fantasy scheme, be it a Athearn or now Skelt trains with their hypothetical line. There's people that'll show up in droves on Facebook and act like you just killed somebody. I mean,
right.
I hate to kind of use that term, but that's how they treat it almost. But
heretic burn. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm always like, look, if you don't like it, don't buy. Nobody's forcing you to buy these things, but don't go after the people that actually do buy them.
Yeah, and it's that. Oh, okay. I've got one of my trains is going off, and I'm trying to get it to shut up. For some reason, when I restarted my central station, it decided we've got something to say. There we go. Okay, I saw that. Sorry about that interruption, friends, but that's how it is. But yeah, it's. I mean, again, there are so many topics here that always bleed into one. You start with one topic, and it leads to some other chat. We could talk forever. I mean, whether we call them rivet counters or whatever we want to call them, we have so many people that they just react so angrily, so violently, because this is their passion, and they're that one thing that has never been done that, by God, they've wanted it for 30 years and nobody's ever done it, whatever, and they get mad when somebody else gets something. And yeah, why we can't just say, hey, it's good. I know I get frustrated because there are certain trains there's a company name that not any of the German companies have manufactured yet, but it runs trains I've ridden on back and forth to a couple of cities in Germany, and nobody's ever made it. But I'm not sitting there screaming and yelling if, well, they made BOB, Bavarian Oberbahn, Bahn Ober Bayern, BOB, Bob. They make things for that, and they've never made Eric's trains. Well, okay.
I'll tell you something funny, Anthony. You'll get a kick out of this. One of my favorite things I see on Facebook is and I saw this when the Skelt trains announced the CSX Heritage units. Now, if you don't know what those are, for anybody who doesn't know what they are, CSX has 21 Heritage units that they've done, and they're counting. They've stopped for a couple of years. I think they said they're going to do some more in 2027, I think. Be the next one they do. But or at least that's what I was reading. But anyway, let's just say a lot of the CSX Heritage units have not been received too well. In fact, someone actually vandalized one of the units and wrote a bunch of let's just say not flattering stuff on it. And Scale Trains came out and said is now doing those engines in HO scale. And I even saw comments, people complaining about that, saying, well, they're just partially painted heritage units. You should just paint the whole thing up. And I'm like, so basically you want to do a fantasy scheme. That's literally what you're asking them to do. And these are the same people that when they actually do fantasy schemes, they jump all over the company for doing them.
Right. All right. Going back to some comments here. You know, somebody was talking about like, this is kind of funny. So if engineers in my loco are Gandalf and Gimli, I won't post it on Facebook. And somebody says, easy cure, don't do Facebook. To be honest, all my stuff, when I post anything train related on Facebook, whether on my main page, my Anthony Dodge page, or my Facebook page for the Miracle Outside, the Model Train Outsider, which I have been ignoring for months and months and months, and haven't posted anything on there in close to a year. Despite all the things I've been doing, it's hard for me to keep up because YouTube has become such. I don't get the negativity on Facebook that I get on YouTube. Now, my email is on my YouTube about me. Some people don't post it. I do have my email in there. That's where I get the most negativity. I get a lot of hate email for various reasons. Some of it is just laughable and I ignore it. But I have been sidely connected with a couple of controversies, and people, for example, there's a whole crowd of people demanding I ban from my channel. How dare I let this person come into my channel? And I'm like, the stuff you're trying to crucify that person for isn't true. I know it's not true, but whatever. But everybody's welcome on my channel, even you people. But don't start banning, But that's where I get the most negativity is, 99% of the negativity I get in the train world is from YouTube. People who watch my videos and then whether it's to bash me for doing songs, or to bash me for doing Matt Clark, or to bash me for not explaining something else, or to bash me for just being an idiot, whatever it is. So yeah, YouTube is where the biggest negativity comes from. That's why I went on that comment. It is 9:18.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's the same way with my channel, Anthony. If you watch it, I appreciate the people that watch it. But if somebody's going to come in and start complaining and yelling and screaming and throwing a fit, I'm like, dude, nobody's making you watch these videos. I'm like, you can watch something else.
Right.
So,
and again, 90% of the negative comments, 95% of the negative comments, I can just, sometimes I'll even fire off something sarcastic back, because very few people are going to win a battle of sarcasm with me. And nobody yet. And so I can give tit for tat. But there are ones that just grate at you because it's so petty. And it's so ignorant, so stupid. For example, one that stuck with me this week, I got a criticism because I forgot to add a couple of pictures into a video because my one camera fogs out and I can't tell it's fogging out until I go through editing. And I was going to add the pictures, but then I had a distraction. And when I came back, I'm done. Click, post. And then, oh crap, I forgot. And somebody's just going off on me how unprofessional I was with the blurry pictures. And yes, I understand. Even in the comment section, I said, sorry guys, I didn't catch this. I missed this in editing. I meant to put the clear pictures up. So if you read the description, I already apologized for a couple of the blurry close-ups where I hold the train up and that stupid camera right behind me on the tripod. But the fact that they start ranting about unprofessional. So that was what I was doing in my live stream yesterday. Like, I'm sorry, does this look like a professional film studio? Does that look like a professional video camera with professional lighting system installed? I'm not professional. I'm a schmuck in his basement. That's it. I'm just a schmuck in his basement. And so I am little things like that occasionally, maybe because I'm already in a bad mood about some other stuff, do get to me. And I'm prone to manic depression. So something like that in the right situation, like this week, sticks in my craw a little bit. But in the end, that stuff's worth it because, like my experience with Getz, to go and meet the people I have met and I hope confirmed friendship, that, you know, because it's hard to say this because people will read into it what they will, but you can have people you know online and you like them, but sometimes it's hard to call somebody a friend unless you really, really, really get to know them and talk to them. And then if you get to meet them in person.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know,
and I'm scared to call anybody a friend because my friends tend to drop dead anymore. But to meet Andy and Dino, who have been such good supporters, that's why Joyce and I are really, 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 as we've been talking to you, we are so trying to figure out sometime. I will say this now, sometime next summer, we are going to somehow meet, because you have been such a big friend.
I may end up getting a bar ride job up your way and we can meet them, but it's hard, you know, you just never know. I was going to tell you this story, and I probably told it 1,000 times already, but when I was coming, when I got sent to Amarillo, Texas, well, first Springfield and then Lincoln, Nebraska, and then Amarillo. When I was in Springfield, I got to go to the OMRA open house that was in Springfield back at the start of the year, and I had the chance to meet a couple YouTubers there. I met Mike Landis at the main track, and Jonah Hemingway at White River Productions, or White River Rail. Sorry, not White River Production. That's a magazine production. My bad. But White River Rails, Jonah Hemingway's channel, and then Mike Landis at the main track. I met him, and then when I came back from Amarillo, I just happened to be coming back through Oklahoma City, got to meet Steve Childers. So that was really cool. And Steve's an awesome guy. I mean, I got to meet him, talk to him for a while. It was just great. So that was really cool.
So yeah, and the first YouTuber I met live in person was Philip Page. I think it was Philip Page. Yeah, he was the first one. And the story of how we met him was so crazy. But because he was checking, when he knew we were in the UK in 2022, he was checking trains and he's like texting us. And like, Anthony, your train's going to be at Wigan at 9:30 in the morning. And you're arriving on platform 5, and right across from your train at platform 6, your next train comes at 9:38. Can I meet you there? And I'm like, dude, it's only 7 minutes. It's okay. I'll find you. I was like, well, you know, it's going to take us a minute or two to get off the train because we got to grab our luggage and fight through the crowd. And but he said, I don't care. I just want to say hello. Somebody was that desperate to meet. And then the one time you loved the train being late, was our connecting train, because there was a problem with a previous train and it had to make extra stops to pick up people, was 30 minutes late. So we actually got to spend almost 40 minutes with Philip. And that was the first time we had met a fellow YouTuber. And sadly, Philip does not really post on YouTube anymore. He did post a rail fanning video a couple of weeks ago. But at the time, he was still doing his kitchen counter layout, kitchen counter railroad, or kitchen counter layout, whatever it was called. And it's why I loved his channel. He didn't have a layout, but he would set up track on his kitchen, this big kitchen counter area they had. And the toaster is a water tower. And there'd be some of his grandkids, either his kids' old toys or grandkids' toys that they keep at the house and just scattered around. So dinosaurs and soldiers. And it would just run on the kitchen counter. There's the toaster, there's the coffee maker, and it was hilarious. And that's what I love about people. People who are just, they don't care what they're running it on. They're just running and having fun.
Yeah. And, you know, like I said, that deal at the OMRA thing, I wasn't expecting that to turn into a mini YouTube meet and greet. I mean, that was just the icing on the cake. to meet those guys. And then, like I said, meeting Steve coming back from Amarillo.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so getting to meet somebody, even when it's random, and it's a chance. I mean, that's great. And again, the guys on the East Coast, it's a little easier. I mean, like Rabel Bell, who was here earlier, there's a lot of guys that live within an hour, 2 hours of him. And I mean, there are guys into trains near me, but they're not people I'm friends with or friends on YouTube. They're not into the European trains, or they're members of the club I'm an ex-member of, which means I don't want to. Hey, Flymo, you're up late. Welcome in.
Hey, Flymo.
Yeah, it's. But again, see, the funny thing is, if you try to do a topic, it will always get, unless it's a very specific topic and not a broad topic, it will always get down to eventually talking about money, quality, and the problems of being on YouTube. They'll always circle back to those topics. But it's, to me, I could give a long sob story, but I think I talked about this in my live stream yesterday. I don't know, because I talked to my friend Christopher about it, because we have 3-hour mutual therapy sessions every Wednesday where we just video chat for 3 hours, sometimes 4. But I actually got depressed earlier this week because a bunch of people last weekend posted videos of 2 of the different shows they'd gone to the last couple of weeks since I had been at Getz. Like, there was the Alsagers, and then there was the crew get together, and there was another, and all these people that I had met at Getz or wanted to meet at Getz and didn't come to Getz, were meeting each other again, and they're doing the same thing. All the group pictures and selfies of one-on-one. And I'm like, I know these people. And I was so jealous. I was so jealous that they were all together again, and I couldn't be there. Now, again, if there were people like that close to me, but look at the people I love from America, the people I want to see. It's you and like Rabel Bell, who is just such a wonderful guy. Heath Hurwitz in New York, I've always wanted to meet him. I don't know if he would hide from me or if he'd want to meet me too, because he's such an amazing guy. He's just brilliant. He's off the charts. He's funny. People get a sense of humor, but there's an angle to a sense of humor that I think a lot of people still miss. But it's that part of his humor I love the best. He's such a brilliant guy with a great story. I would love to meet Heath and hang out with him for a while, but they're all long car rides, which I just can't do anymore. My back won't let me do it, and my patience definitely won't let me do it. Or it's an expensive flight. Now, here I am talking about expensive flight when I just flew to the UK, but that was a last of my crazy retirement money, and that was something I had to do because it was my one chance to meet all these people. I might meet them again next time I go to the UK, but to have all of them in one spot where I could meet so many was so important. And Joyce was into it too, because like I said, Joyce wound up, I originally expected Joyce would be kind of hiding behind me going, "Who's that? Is it safe to come out?" But people would be talking to me, and there were people there to see Joyce. Joyce, come here. We want to talk to you.
That's great that you got to meet all those guys over there. So that was really cool. So.
Yeah, and so I would love to be able to do it with some of the Americans, but like the big one that a lot of people go to is Amherst, and there's a lot of people I'd like to meet at Amherst, but some of my favorite Americans that I would like to meet, they don't go to Amherst.
Well,
I said, you're probably top of our list. You are probably top of our list of Americans we want to meet because, for example, Joyce loves your Fredo videos. Joyce loves you have become her favorite channel of the American channels simply because of Fredo, because she loves that you took Fredo as your own and are running with it.
And I told you that when you developed the character, I'm going to do this because I wanted to kind of how do I want to say this? Bridge the gap of the Matt Clark series and put my own spin on it, where you would have a descendant of one of the characters doing something.
Yeah.
I'm
and so
E5. I can do that. I can make Fredo the driver.
Right. Yeah, and it was cool. It's cool. I keep waiting for you to kind of maybe link in. But again, it's it's a video game, so things are controlled. But if there's a way you could link in his grandfather.
Yeah, see, the problem is, and I really want to do this, but I'm not like Michael Mrutz where he does these intros. If you haven't seen his channel, he does these intros where he's doing a World of Outlaws series right now, as a matter of fact, and one of his cohorts, if you will, is a Formula One driver by the name of Alessio Delata, who he calls Dom DeLuise in the series.
Gotcha.
And some of his intros are pretty wild, and I would love to do that, but I'm like, I can't do the voices, and I don't want to be intruding on Michael either. So trying to steal his deal, but it would be cool to like link in like like a descendant of Matt Clark, or what's the sheriff's name? I forgot now.
What the Kahat or?
Yeah, the Kahat Airlines. Do like a goofy.
Yeah, that would be cool to have a sponsor in the game.
Yeah, have the Kahat Airlines.
Tourism. Can't understand tourism.
The problem with that, Anthony, is the Xbox One version game. And I talked to Murph Turn 2 about that through his live stream. I said, can you actually do this with the Xbox One? Because he actually makes custom paint schemes for Michael and the other guys. And I asked him in a live stream in the chat, I said, all these schemes you're creating these games, can you do that on the Xbox One version of that game? And he said, no, you can't. That's the problem.
Oh, wow.
That's the only downside to that game. You can't create custom schemes in it. If you have the PC version, you can. But
I need to get writing, by the way.
But the Xbox One game, you're basically limited to whatever the game gives you. So
I'm hoping, speaking of all that, I am hoping I've got a plot. I just got to fill in some jokes, but there should be a Christmas special from Big Gulch. If I get my butt writing, I need to start writing. It won't take me long to put it together, so I have plenty of time before Christmas. But I'm hoping that there will be a Big Gulch Christmas special, which will be a springboard into a new season of Matt Clark that will show up sometime next year.
But yeah, at some point, I don't know if it'll be this season or season 4 of the series. I would eventually like to kind of finagle a way to get the Kahat in there, or a descendant of the mayor and Daisy, the mayor and Daisy, or the sheriff, whoever. Maybe a version of Diesel Dan. So. Maybe make Diesel Dan the crew chief. There you go. That might be an idea.
Yeah, you don't want Matt and Diesel Dan together. Things blow up.
Yeah, that tends to be a problem. So,
Matt, did we just blow up? Yes, Dan. We just blew up another train. Matt, did we just? That's why the Christmas special for Series 3, which was the least watched of anything Matt Clark, sadly. I was having a blast because not only did they blow up trains, they blew up a lot of trains in that one. That was the running joke in the Christmas special. They started with blowing up the toy train. Matt, did we just? Yes, Diesel Dan, we just blew up a toy train.
This is why we can't have nice things, kids.
This is why, yeah. And oh God, because the next season of Matt Clark, they're in Europe, so the Orient Express and all kinds of trains are doomed.
There you go. Matt Clark abroad.
I don't know when it'll be out, but yeah, it's going to be a European tour, which anybody who's paid attention, I said if I ever did another Matt Clark, but I've got a basic plot line. I do have the villain. Actually, I have 2 new villains. And it could be arranged that Fredo returns.
Our boy Fredo may be
How's
making a
Arty
comeback.
doing? Arty has taken up transcendental meditation, and he sits in a room with a bunch of candles and mutters all kinds of bizarre incantations with psychedelic posters of the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi all over. And the last time I talked to him, he had grown his hair really long and his beard really long. And he had incense all over the room, and he was sitting cross-legged like this. I was impressed his old man body could do it. He's just going llama, 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 llama. But you got to do it with an Australian accent. Right, llama, 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 llama.
Yeah, Arty's on a darkness retreat. He's probably with Aaron Rodgers on a darkness retreat now.
He's on another planet. Well, the Flying Scotsman is after Matt Clark's time. I had to research that. When was the Flying Scotsman built? Because Matt Clark is 1890s. Because one of the jokes I originally thought was in the UK, you're going to find out why the Flying Scotsman got that name. It originally was just called the Scotsman, and then Matt Clark and Diesel Dan met it, and then it became the Flying Scotsman. Yep, he's lost his marbles. He never had too many agates to begin with. Scot-free. But yeah, so apparently I didn't draw the deep conversation with I wondered if people would have not strong opinions, but some opinions, or if they had ones. Like, I've got a false flag. I've got a fantasy one. Arty is still recovering. Arty is always in recovery. They've got, you know, Arty was lost because Arty was running around drinking Fosters and singing Little River Band and just an embarrassment to all Australians.
That's unfortunate.
Hey, Marty's Train Shed is here. Speaking of another Australian, good to have you from down under. It's that time of year. It's getting hot down there in Australia. But yeah, it just getting cold here. Exactly. An Aussie is messed up. An Aussie is messed up when he's drinking Fosters.
You was talking about meeting people, Anthony. People may have heard me and Jason both talk about this, but me and Jason, the train freak, are actually right at 3 hours apart from each other. I live in northern Arkansas, and he lives in central Arkansas near Little Rock. So,
hour and a half each way. That's not a bad drive, hour and a half.
But the way my job schedule is all over the place, that kind of makes it hard to get out.
Right, exactly.
Meet people because I don't want to go all the way down there, and then I get a call and say, "We're out of drivers. We need somebody to take a crew somewhere."
Yeah, Delmarva, I do my Friday live stream, the Friday before Christmas, which I think is December 22nd this year. I think. I'll double check that right now. But I think Friday, December 20th, which is actually my grandson's birthday, but I think we're celebrating his birthday the week before. But Friday, December 20th, that is Steamer Palooza. That is my Christmas special. I run my Christmas train down here, and I run nothing but steam trains down here. Even last year when I did Steamer Palooza, I could only run 4 lanes with steamers. This year, I can run all 6 because I've got a bunch more steamers now. So we're going to have steamers all over the place, and I'm going to see how many of them I can actually get smoking. So it's going to be wild. But yeah, Steamer Palooza, is my Christmas show. And then usually in January at the heart of winter here, I do either a live stream or a special live stream where I run all my ICE trains, all my white, snowy white ICE trains. And of course, ICE can spell ice, but you don't call them ice trains. You'll confuse the German if you call them ice trains. They are ICEs.
And if for anybody maybe traveling through the West Plains, Missouri area in December, the club's Christmas display will fire up December 5th. I've got a video covering the hours of operation there. So for whatever reason, I put it in my shorts portion of my channel, but it's on there. So
Marty, I don't know about, well, maybe where you are, but I have been in plenty of Australian restaurants and carryouts where Foster's is sold when we were in Australia. Saw Foster's on tap. So, yep, we're going to have a lot of steamers. I'm already planning it out because, well, it'll only be 3 weeks away from 4 weeks from today. But I'll do Steamer Palooza. And sometimes I do a Christmas Eve special in the day, but I'll wait and see what other people do. Because December 19th is my birthday, and then December 20th is my grandson's birthday. He will be the big 4.
Blink, he'll be 13. It's hard to imagine my niece is 13 years old right now, but he is.
Yeah. Well, the change in Cayenne in just the last 6 months, which of course is a large part of his life, but oh my God, he has matured in a lot of ways just in the last few months since he started preschool, which is what I was so waiting for. Is he's finally with other kids.
Yeah.
Because some of the social skills are lacking because all he's had to model is adults. No siblings, no cousins, no kids in his neighborhood, his age. And he's around mom and dad or Opa all day. But since he started preschool, and my daughter gets him, takes him to the park and tries to get, to meet kids, but he's so used to being the center of, he expects every kid to follow him and do what he wants. He expects every kid to join in and play his way. So now he's with kids daily, 4 days a week in preschool. And kids are like, no, I don't have to do what you want to do. And he's learning to work with other people. And it's been a huge change in him. He's always a wonderful kid, but he's finally learning certain social skills he was lacking.
Yeah, it's funny. You can tell Cheyenne's a teenager now because I asked her once. I said, "So, how's school, Cheyenne?" I hate it.
I hate it. No, I never hated school. I always loved school. It got me away from some things, but that's a different story. All right, well, I'm going to turn this off. But anyhow, yeah, it was a successful day for me. Sadly, I know yours was the opposite, but you found what the problem was. But I got this guy in a good situation. He's still only running one way, but he's working, and got my big ICE3 back working and running. So, yeah.
Like I said, I said this during the stream too. I had a hunch something was not right with these two engines because they were this way when I got them, and they were running so sluggish. And I never. Well, at the time, I really didn't have the know-how to really tear into them, and I didn't want to strip them down and not, knowing what to do. Just have two engines sitting there in pieces and not knowing what to do with them. But now that like you said, this is what YouTube was really good for, because now I've gained a lot of the knowledge from other people that I can have at least some confidence to take stuff apart. And, diagnose what the problem is. So
Right.
that's one
Oh
thing
yeah,
that's been really great about being on YouTube.
And I'm trying to learn that stuff. I'm trying to like all this little digital stuff. These are baby steps. I mean, there are guys that have been doing digital, IT guys and everybody else. This has been their life, their jobs. This is what they work in and day out. And to them, it's first grade stuff. Well, you know, for me, who there's a lot of stuff I know and do that those guys probably have no knowledge of, or, you know, the minimal working knowledge of. And, but be that as it may, it's, I'm trying to force myself to learn this stuff. And, you know, so the baby steps have got to come, you know, to get just these simple decoders and these simple motors. And then, okay, now I've learned how to use this decoder program and program a decoder and put it in a train where the decoder was burned out. The next step I'm going to learn with this guy is how to replace a motor with a modern motor and a modern decoder. And that's going to be a huge job. That's going to be a huge job because now I have to do all the wiring. Everything else I've done, everything's pretty much wired. I mean, even the decoder, it's just pop one decoder out, pop one in. But the nice thing is I don't have to set the CV codes. I don't have to go into JMRI or something like that. Okay, I want this. It's preloaded. Miraklin makes it so easy to download, program the decoder, pop it in the device, and boom, instant working. No changing CV codes and adjusting this, that, and the other thing. It does it all for me. Hey, Vandon Eisenbaum, we were just getting ready to, I'm looking forward to more of your videos. I saw a couple of your shorts. You had a live stream from the Train Fest up there, but then when I went to watch it, it said private video, and I couldn't watch it. So, hello, Eric. But yeah, we are just wrapping up because I promised Joyce I'd be off before 10, and I was really hoping 9:30. But yeah, the talk is good, and I like hanging out with people.
Yeah, fun stream. Get a good discussion.
Oh, I hope so. I hope people enjoyed it. For a long time, this show didn't have competition, but now there are people that have moved their live streaming to Saturday at 8 o'clock. And again, that's not a complaint or criticism. It's people go when they can go. I'm lucky I have a time slot that only a couple of times in the, what did I just do? 242. So 240 straight Fridays. That's almost 5 years worth. It's almost 5 years worth doing the live stream. So it's, the first live stream I did was June of 2024, but I was doing, sometimes I did 2 or 3 a week. But about 4 years ago, I started just Friday. I was always doing Friday, but I started doing just Friday. And so it's been going for over 4 years without missing a Friday. Yeah, it's I could blame it. I could really blame live streaming for why I don't get any work done on my layout because I don't work on camera. I can't work on camera. It drives me crazy trying to make sure, is this being seen in the camera and blah, blah, blah. Chatting to people, talking, having people.
And that's the thing with me. I would like to, people do streams like working on these trains and stuff. The problem, and I hate to keep harping on this, but the way my job functions, if I look around like number 1 and number 2, you can't do that kind of stuff because you might get 5 minutes into a stream and then they call you. And then they may just
actually, Arty, she wants me to play a bedtime story. Yeah, and it can, and it could definitely turn that way. It's just, some people are comfortable doing it, some people aren't. And me, I can't do it. I need to be 100% focused on the job at hand. And I lose track of time. It's like, you know, when I was rebuilding this basement, I could put 8 to 10 hours in, and I would finally take a break and go, what time is it? I'd say, what, 4 o'clock? And Joyce would be like, it's 11 o'clock at night, dear. Oh, it did get dark, didn't it? Sorry, I was, yeah, I lose track of time. And
I do too.
but yeah, working on camera would just drive me crazy. You can ask Jean Ricard, except he couldn't come in tonight because he works early his time. He was trying to watch me work on, because he's trying to help me with a couple of things we're still trying to figure out with this. And I'm left-handed, and I set the camera up to the right because I don't want the camera near my hand where I'm working.
Yeah.
And so the problem is I'm holding things with my right hand and I'm blocking his view while I'm working. And it's like, that's just it. So you can't do that. Well, hi, Tammy and Ray. I am just trying to wrap up here because, as I said, I promised Joyce I would be off by 10.
You know, when we was talking earlier about you was saying that people like me were your go-to info for American trains. It's the same way with you and John and a lot of the other guys with the Merklin stuff. I would know nothing about the stuff you run if I wasn't watching you guys. So, so it kind of comes full circle, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, it's mutual. I mean, and that's what really exploded my channel. I mean, I was around for almost a couple of years, and some people had stumbled across me when I was doing the original show called The Model Train Outsider, and then I decided to do a more serious show, The Merklin Outsider, and that's when I started to grow, and I went from 200 subs to 500 subs over 3-4 months because I was explaining the Merklin system in English, and a lot of Americans, but Danes and French were just so Danes, French, Dutch, Poles, Italians were so thrilled that somebody was explaining it in English because the Merklin stuff is 80% of the channels that explain things are in German. And the official Merklin channel is always in German, although now they do an English version. But I was already doing an English version of their stuff before they were. And they now call it the International. They do every video, and then they have the same version called International version when they announce something or here's a how-to video. But yeah, I was explaining the Merklin system, but that's also when, you know, all those videos still have the most views on my channel because they were really going big. People go, but once I got to a certain point, you start getting the people demanding things from you. I want you to do a video on this, and you've got to do this, and you got to show how to do. Well, I'm not going to be doing that on my layout. Yeah, but do a video where you show how it's done. Like, well, where am I going to do it? Well, just do it on that one section. No, I'm not going to. And they get upset with you because you won't do what they want you to do. And I hit a point where I was like, that's all I know about Merklin. And of course, I've got people that those videos are from 2019 and 2020. They're 5 years ago. Things have changed. I have learned more. But you get somebody who watches that video from 5 years ago, even though I'm saying I'm a beginner, but I'm trying to explain this. And they start going, you didn't explain that properly. You need to talk about this, 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 and this. I said, first of all, some of this didn't apply then. And secondly, understand the goal of that video wasn't to explain it to you, a model train pro. It was to explain it to my family, my friends, and even my students who were watching my videos back then, and just say, if you want to understand what I'm doing, what I'm into, here it is. And this is why I like this system. And you get somebody that, because you're not explaining it at a doctoral level and going through every chemical involved in the process of the electrical current flowing through, they get upset with you. It's like, it's not for you. But that's, you know, that's how it works. English, you mean American? It's called English. It may be an American dialect of English. Officially, it's Mideast Coastal English. But be that as it may, just as you speak a certain dialect of Australian English. But we'll argue linguistics and semantics another time. And just remember, Attila, Joyce still has that baseball bat.
She knows how to use it, don't she, Anthony?
Joyce is a good sport. The fact that she goes along, she does the characters of Matt Clark I ask her to do. She sings the songs usually. There are times she puts her foot down and says, I'm not singing that one. But she does them. And she comes down here every Friday, usually for an hour, but lately her job's killing her. And yesterday it was so funny. Joyce has never ranted on camera like that. She got into a rant there. Somebody brought up the wrong topic at the wrong time, and Joyce was like, all right, I've had enough, and she had a funny rant there last night. Which at first I was like, honey, calm down. And then I'm like, go. Get it out of your system. But yeah. But anyhow, people, I got 2 minutes to wrap it up and shut everything down here. So I think I'm going to bid you all a good night. I want to thank Randall for coming up and help, because Randall's a good sport. He puts up with me interrupting his chat all the time.
Hey, Anthony, you're more welcome to interrupt anytime you want. I'm just glad I get to come on here and bug you guys for a little bit. So,
no, I love it. You're great to talk to and feed off, and it's cool. But that's why I like to do what I do. I just wish someday Arty would be here so I could be over there or down there, and whoever else is up here too.
And you tell Joyce there will be a Fredo Bangino episode, Fredo Bangino, the 4th episode next, maybe Sunday. No, because I got premiere videos tomorrow.
Okay.
One day next week you'll have Fredo Bangino the 4th come back. He will be racing in Phoenix this time.
Cool, because the best thing is Joyce is off work all week. Of course, she's got to work Thursday because she does the Thanksgiving bit, and I don't do a damn thing to help her. So on that note, once again, I'm going to say thanks to Randall. Thank you who all came in and visited. Most people have already ran out the door. So those of you who have still stayed here, we're going to say thank you, good night. I'll be the Zane Choose and happy trains. Take care, everybody.
See you guys. See you, Anthony.
Take care, Randall.
Yep, have a good one.